Ooh, it is cold. It is a cold, cold day in November. Nonfiction November. I'm here to give you my TBR for the month, so stick around and find out what I'm reading. So it is Nonfiction November. That is something I always participate in. I am unfortunately in a bad state of reading this year, and I have several books I want to read that are nonfiction for the first time. Yeah, so this month I will be reading a lot of nonfiction, but I'm also going to be including some fiction books. And this is, like I said, a first for my Nonfiction November. Another reason why I wanted to do that was because I know Ken from Native Lady Book Warrior is doing a readathon this month called the Skoden Readathon, where it is essentially an Indigenous hosted and themed readathon where the goal is to read Indigenous works. Part of the reason I decided to let myself read a few more fiction books is so I can sort of fit in some books that I wanted to read last month, didn't get in, and would happen to satisfy this new readathon. And I also want to support Kim in her newest readathon here. Without further ado, let's get into what I'm actually reading. I'm going to start with the fiction books, actually. Well, they're not fiction strictly, but with the Skoden Readathon picks. First off, I'm doing My Heart as a Chainsaw. I actually started this last month. If you saw my October reading plans, you would have seen I was thinking of a Stephen Graham Jones, and I ended up picking My Heart as a Chainsaw. This is supposed to be a buddy read with Erica from The Broken Spine, but I saw her TBR. I didn't see this book on there, so I'm not sure if we're postponing that or if that's still a plan for us to do a live show discussion. We were supposed to do it in person. I was supposed to be in Baltimore this week. Right now it's like the 10th, and I ended up canceling the show because I ended up catching the flu last week when my flight was supposed to be, and I didn't want to risk infecting the people at the conference I was going to be at. The point is we're supposed to be buddy reading this, even though I won't be there in person to meet her and do a live show. I did start it last month, so I'm kind of cheating with the readathon, but I'm going to allow it because it's just for fun. And I sort of finished it this month already, since we're well into the month. Next up, I want to read Renter Counts. This is a thriller Indigenous work that I don't know a lot about. I've heard others talk about it. It was on my October reading plans, but I didn't get to it. So I figured the Skoden Readathon would be a fantastic excuse to make room for it this month in November. Okay, one last one that I would like to try and read was called The Heartbeat of a Wounded Knee. This is a history nonfiction book on American history and how it intersects specifically with the indigenous nations of America. Written by David Truer. I forget which indigenous tribe he is from. If it's not clear, I'm not really paying attention to the prompts. So at this point, I just want to read what I can read and be done with it, because I am having such a hard time to read right now. I've finished one book in the middle of two more books this month, and it's the 10th. Continuing on with the books that are not in the Skoden Readathon or the Nonfiction November, Into the Woodwrack Wilds is a new release by Shauna McGuire, aka Deborah Baker, in the A. Deborah Baker series connected to Middle Game. I wanted to read it last month. I just didn't get to it. It's one of those things where time is a fickle thing. So I'm fitting into this month. Another fiction book, the last fiction book I believe on this TBR, is going to be one that I forgot to list here, meaning I have 11 books to tell you about, which is probably way more than I could possibly read this month. But we're here. Fledgling by Octavia Butler. This is going to be a reread, but it's a high priority to read this. One, because it has been several years since I've read it the first time, but also because the Octavia Butler slow read is doing the live show the end of this month, the last Sunday of this month. So I'm going to be reading that for that live show. I encourage you to check it out. It's the only book in a series, so it's a standalone. It's not really a series. It was meant to be a series, but Octavia Butler died. And basically it's Octavia Butler's vampire story. It deals with power and consent, and some very uncomfortable situations, but I remember it being a really good book, really compelling, really fascinating, as is all of her work. And plus, it's one of the last couple books that we'll be talking about on the Octavia Butler slow read, so it's a high priority for me to get to that. Next up, let's talk about some arcs that I'm probably going to prioritize. The Biggest Ideas in the Universe by Sean Carroll. This is more, I think, a broad scale review of big topics in physics, so to the mainstream audience. I think he was trying to present big topics in physics in a way that you would expect to see, in a structure that you would expect to see like a course, on a level that is accessible to the common reader. And so I'm excited to get to this. This is his newest book. It's probably not the one I would have picked up if I didn't get the arc as quickly, that is. I would have prioritized other books, but I did get the arc, so I really should pick it up and review it. I have so many books I've already not reviewed. Like, I have a lot of books that I've read, reviewed, but not posted a review on NetGalley. I need to pick up on that. I'm hoping I'll have more time once I'm isolated all alone in Australia. The next one is going to be called Remember, or The Art of Remember, or just Remember. It's basically about remembering and our memory and how fallible it is. And this one I've actually started. It's interesting so far. It's the author of the book Still Alice, about this woman in middle age suffering early onset Alzheimer's. So in that sense, you have a scientist who is also an author talking about memory. I know some of this based off some podcasts and other books I've read. There was Skeptic's Side of the Universe, which of course is a podcast and also a book that I read a year or so ago, where it talks about memory and other things to do with cognitive processes. But I'm interested in, I guess, seeing a book dedicated to it. But so far it's interesting, and the concept I think is fascinating. I guess to give a quick precursor to the basic idea of why we should care, we have this idea of our memory, of what we can remember. The truth is our memory is shit, especially when you get down to 5-10 years. After 10 years, your memory is almost certainly not how you remembered it. It is almost certain something has changed, despite how perfect your memory might feel. Every time you remember something, the act of remembering rewrites the old memory and you replace it with whatever you think it is. So memories suck, and this book is all about that. And that's the last arc I suspect I'll try and get to this month. There are other books though, of course. There is Trick or Treatment by Simon Singh. This is a nonfiction book. I think I had tried to read it before in the past, but it's essentially about alternative medicine and why it is not just bullshit, but also extremely harmful. And I don't know, I just felt compelled to pick this book up recently because of something I saw. That's all I'll say about it. It's a book that I'm excited to read and give a platform to, and hopefully bring some attention to it, because I do think it's something that people need to be reminded of, or at least made aware of, that there are harms to alternative medicines, especially when they're not regulated by the FDA. Another one that I'm going to be reading is Madly Deeply. This is one that is not something I own, it's not an arc I got, but to be honest, I'm really intrigued by Alan Rickman's life and him as an actor, and I'm curious to see what this memoir of his, or this collection of thoughts he had during his life, would be like. So it's a good chance I'll pick this up, if only because I want something that I'm really interested in. I'm getting kind of convoluted here. Part of that question, to be honest, is reflecting on what I have coming up that week, the things I have to do. When I know I have something like this week where I have a conference and also visiting family, I know most of my time will be spent focusing on this stuff. I won't have much time to just put something on. So I really should have picked up something that would have compelled me to want to read during my off times, instead of trying to read during my natural day, which is usually how I read. It's just the problem is when I'm at home, I don't have a lot of time where I'm just naturally, traveling or doing chores, because my family already does their own chores usually. What am I talking about? I'm rambling. This is my TBR. This is my life of reading of late. So welcome to my life. And one more. Actually, this is the other one I'm actually currently reading. This one, I am compelled to read it. I don't have time to get too deep into it. It's called We Are Not Broken, a new memoir by George M. Johnson, an author who wrote All Boys Are Not Blue. They are a non-binary author who talks about what it means to be queer and queer femininity from a, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know how to describe it. Essentially, being born in a body that is assumed to be male, and you have your own femininity and your own non-gender conforming aspects. But right now, they're focusing heavily on the relationship with their grandmother, who also acted as their mother. And I'm not sure if that's the entirety of the book, or we're just starting off there. But so far, it's about love in a black family. Like, they have their family and the bonds that were formed there, and how that defined their character and their history and who they are. And so far, it reminds me a lot, I think, of Maya Angelou's books, and how she framed her books as an opportunity to sort of reflect on her life, but also with the underlying message about the way it sort of reflected on her life. I don't know, maybe I'm stretching there, but that's my thoughts on that. And that's everything. Oh, that's not true. Fuck it. I don't know what here. I shouldn't be adding this. But Cycles of Time by Roger Penrose is just a general book about big questions or big ideas in physics, in the universe. Maybe it has to do with the potential cycling of the universe. I'm not sure exactly how specific it is in the sort of scope of what it's talking about, or if it's more broad and overarching. But even though I have so much science to read, not enough time, it's another one of those books that I'm honestly just really interested in reading this month, even though it doesn't really tick off any boxes of arcs or anything like that, or readathons or anything like that. It's something that I would like to get to, if not this month, maybe next month. It'll probably end up carrying over to December, for being honest. But these are all the books I'm reading this month. A lot for nonfiction, a lot of them are science, at least one history, some books for the Skoden Readathon. I'm really excited for that. Let me know if you're participating in that, and or Nonfiction November. And as always, stay safe, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.